And I can't stop the way that I feel. boy. Now we're free. Oh, what a joy. Just come on down to the fifth floor. Find a spot out on the floor. Ah, free now. You're free, says she. Free now. Now free. I said free. Now free.
If you're thinking you're too cool to work at, oh boy, have I got news for you. Everybody here tonight must forget. Let me tell you, you are no exception to the rule. Get on up on the floor, 'cause we're gonna boogie till you just can't boogie no more. Boogie no more. You can't boogie no more. Boogie no more. Listen to the
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Dayton International Peace Museum. My name is Alice Young-Basora, and I am the executive director here. Welcome to those of you who have not been here before. For those of you who have not been here before, you are sitting in the one and only Peace Museum in the United States. Yay. I like to say yay, but I also like to say it's a little bit sad. For comparison, in Japan, there are over 100 peace museums. So to me, that says that it would be great if we had a peace museum in every single state, but we don't. And for me, I think we need peace more than ever. If you look around outside, actually, yes, the weather, but also, you watch the news, you listen to the radio, you look at how people interact and treat each other, and I think it's pretty easy to decipher that we do need peace more than ever. We live in chaos. We live in a world that it's easy to get lost in, and it's easy to lose your footing and lose your sense of center. And for me, I like to think about this place, and this place is being a centering location. And because what it does is it focuses me and us and those that come in here on peace. And one of the things that we like to talk about is this nifty little thing that we call the peace pyramid. And really all it is a triangle that we've divided up into 5 different layers, and the bottom one being individual peace. And then individual peace, meaning the foundation of that pyramid is peace within yourself. And so if we have that peace within ourselves, we can then share that peace with our family, with our community, with our country, and with our world. And that's the focus of some of the education that we do here. And education is really primary to what we do. And the panel behind me today is fundamental to that, because we think of peace, we think of internal peace, we think of being happy, we think of meditating, we think of, being joyful. But sometimes you don't automatically think of the environment. And it actually is intrinsically linked to our peace and our well-being. For me, I think about people and their health. Health is linked to climate change. And tonight, that's why we're here. We're here to talk about climate change. We're here to talk about all the things that we're doing and not doing that impact the world around us. And so, we're going to hear a lot of different ways that climate is tied to peace and the peace of those around us in this world. So the Alliance for Climate Justice that we've started here and that Lonnie is heading up is become really important to us. And it's really important to the work that we do here, because the people that are affected, we had a speaker here this afternoon, and she lives on a tiny little island that already is being affected by climate change. And it's becoming unlivable because the seawater is already exceeding their water table. So their water there that they have is becoming undrinkable. And she's leaving her country for other reasons, but people are becoming climate refugees and aren't able to live in places. And so places like Ohio are going to be prime locations for people to come to. And so it is going to start impacting everybody. And when people don't have safe places to live, it impacts peace. And just simply just that. But we're a museum. We're a place where people can come and feel safe and have that place where you can have those conversations that you don't find any other place to have. And we have a whole calendar of events coming up to celebrate our season for nonviolence. And we're in the midst of that right now with our Power of Words celebration. And we started off the season for nonviolence with stories about hope, with stories about words. And the first weekend, we heard from the Haitian population in Springfield, Ohio. and how words heavily impacted their community, and how words here today on the stage tonight, right now, and earlier today impact people in profound ways. And my hope today is that you make a friend while you're here, you meet somebody or talk to somebody that you've never talked to before, and you hear the words spoken in here tonight, and you carry forth a message of peace and hope, that you know that you're an agent of change, and that you know you're part of this process, and that you know that together we can make peace possible. But I'm excited to hear the panel behind me. Please become a member and join us in what we do. We can only do this with your support. 85% of nonprofits survive from individual members and individual donations. So if you're not a member, please become a member. You can go on our website, you can donate cash in the jar, whatever you want to do, but join us in this process of being a peacemaker. Also, tap into our events that we have coming up, because we've got some really good things happening. Check our website out, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever it is that you like to do. But I'm going to turn this mic over to Lonnie so you can. Oh, I have my own mic. You get your own. Love it. Okay, enjoy. Thank you.
Is my mic on? Yeah. Excellent. I'm Lonnie Franks, and if you want to contact me, it's very easy. It's Lonnie, Lonnie, it's double N, Lonnie at peace.museum. We have a great URL, right? Peace.museum. Since we're the only one, it works out really well in the US. I have been working on climate for about 5 years. My background is I was director of engineering at NCR, and I do a lot of engineering work, a little bit of scientific work. And about 5 years ago, I listened to Greta Thunberg and thought she was a raving idiot. Unfortunately, when I figured out that she was correct in most of what she said, I felt kind of bad. So I went to COP, the climate conference in Glasgow, met a whole bunch of people involved in climate, and decided to do more and more and more on the climate side of things, environment and climate. So how many people believe global warming is real? Me, of course. In the United States, it has moved from about 20% of people believing in global warming and climate change to about 70% now, which is should be a political movement. In one sense, people would believe in climate, right? But as you're aware, many programs to help reduce climate change or to mitigate the issues of climate change are now being reversed. So we do have a serious problem. So I won't go into it too much, but a little bit of the science, 2 pieces of science. One is that we're now at over 420 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that relates to approximately 1 degree Celsius. It will be 1.5 degrees Celsius shortly. That on average will be above pre-industrial levels. That change, so everybody with me that it's going to get warmer? Okay, you all know that. One of the things people don't understand, and so I do a lot of work in the ocean, is the problems that occur in the ocean. So most people only see it on the land. Do we have more floods? Yes. Do you want to live in Kentucky? No. Bad things are going to happen in Kentucky. Every couple of years, they're going to have a 100-year flood in Kentucky. Houston has had 3 500-year floods in the last 10 years. So flooding is going to happen. We're going to have wind events. Last year we had the record number of tornadoes. We all love tornadoes, right? The more tornadoes, the better. In Florida, it's nearly impossible to get insurance if you live in southern Florida because they expect more and more severe hurricanes. So you can't get insurance. And in Southern California, the wildfires, followed quickly by flooding, are causing them to no longer be able to get insurance in Southern California for their housing. So guess where people are going to move in the United States? Dayton, Ohio. So our property values will go up, so please buy a house and hold on to it because that'll be a good wealth builder. But guess what happens to the wealth for people in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, although New Mexico's a little higher elevation and does a little better, Arizona and Southern California, their property values, yeah, go way down. And they'll be moving here. Now, another piece of the science is that the impacts to places like Dayton, Ohio are going to be much smaller than many parts of the world. That is, we are going to have a longer and a worse pollen season. We'll have floods, not in Dayton, because we're pretty good about floods. We will have flash droughts. We had a flash drought last year and lost not a lot, but 10 to 15% of the corn crop last year because of the flash drought at the end of the year. I never even heard the term flash drought until 3 years ago. That's when it gets really hot for a relatively short period of time, like 30 days. But if it's 95 degrees and you don't have any rain for 30 days, crops don't do well, especially in the end of the season. But in the Southern Hemisphere in particular, so everybody familiar with the term Global South? Global South is the South, right, of the world. They are going to be so dramatically impacted that at the current trajectory we're on, there will be 500 million climate migrants. Now, all of these aren't refugees, but 500 million climate migrants by 2050. There's almost nothing we can do now to not have 500 million climate migrants. What that means is, what did we have? 20,000 Haitians come to Springfield? That will be a very small amount. We are likely to have 40 or 50,000 climate migrants coming into Dayton, Ohio by 2050. Now, it may start a little earlier because many of those projections were projecting based on what had been done on the previous administration. The current administration is undoing some of that. So it may be as soon as 2035 that we're going to see tens of thousands of climate migrants here in Dayton, Ohio. Some of those will be refugees. Now, in addition to that, we have environmental issues that we simply don't take care of, and we'll talk about environmental justice a bit too. I'll give a couple of examples. Environmental justice, anybody ever hear of Flint, Michigan? Do you go there for the water? Why would we have lead pipes? What is that? We know lead is bad. We're hurting children and hurting them badly. So that's an example of environmental justice. We really are being unjust to the people in Flint, Michigan. It's hard to raise a family there, and we should take care of lead pipes. We know how to do it. It's not rocket science to take care of that. On the climate justice side of things, 2 years ago in Maricopa County, I don't have the numbers for last year yet, the coroner in Maricopa County takes about 6 months to validate everything. But 2 years ago in Maricopa County, more than 500 people died of heat-related causes. That was just a little bit more than they had. Well, actually, it was almost double what they had in car accidents and just slightly less than what they had in guns and killings from guns. So in the United States, in Maricopa County, you're almost equally likely to die from heat as you are from guns, and about twice as likely to die from heat as you are from an auto accident. So Maricopa County is kind of a bellwether county. I have 2 sets of cousins who moved to Phoenix because they thought that would be a great place to retire. Now they say it's too hot and way too dry, and they're running out of water, and they don't know what to do. Uh, so you may ask, what does that have to do with climate justice? From a climate justice perspective, 90-some% of the people who died lived in trailer parks. They lived in, and about half of those did not have access to air conditioning. Do you know what happens if you have 100 days of 100-degree temperatures and you live in a tin can? If you're old like me, you're going to die. You just can't hydrate, you can't sleep, bad things are going to happen. So the poor are much more affected by climate issues in the United States, and they're going to be much more affected around the world. So those are two examples. Anybody have an example of environmental or climate justice that you all want to bring up? Alice, do you have any example of climate or asthma? Yeah, last year we called the Dayton Children's Hospital, and they said they had a 30% increase in children coming in for asthma, and they were missing school days because of asthma here. And do you know which children have the worst asthma? If you don't have a good furnace filter, you don't have air conditioning, your asthma gets much worse. Heat-induced asthma is fairly common. I couldn't get a doctor today, sorry. Any other examples? Anybody have any examples of climate justice that they thought about? Allergies. Allergies are enhanced. Does anybody like mosquitoes? Do you like the algae blooms on Lake St. Mary's? What happens to communities like that? They shut it down. First they have a tornado, then they have an algae bloom. What a great year for them. Yeah, they shut it down for the tornadoes and then for the algae because of the heat. And environmentally, allowing people to literally use all kinds of fertilizer that gets fed into the lake. And no one is responsible for getting rid of the nitrogen or phosphorus from the lake. So algae does what algae does, which is grow. Any other examples from around here? So one thing that I'd like to bring up is that in Ohio last year we had a corn crop problem because of a late summer heat wave. Anybody remember the heat wave last summer? Yeah, your backyard dies. Those farmers were pretty much made whole by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, paying them for their lost crop. What do you suppose would happen to those farmers if they no longer had that subsidy? So yeah, they'd be gone. Did they do anything to cause the climate to change? Were they just trying to grow corn, make us some ethanol maybe, feed some cattle? They weren't being bad people, but they could lose their farms because sooner or later there won't be enough money to pay farmers to plant corn in Ohio because there will be a serious problem. So I talked about corn. Let me talk about cotton in Texas. Lubbock County, Texas. A couple of farmers there were kind and bought some biochar. Now I'm moving into solutions a little bit because I'm only going to talk about a couple of solutions. Biochar is like charcoal, but it can be made from anything. And so this particular biochar is made from hemp, not that you kind of smoke it hemp, but the, you know, make ropes out of it kind of hemp. So they put some biochar on their soil, and the biochar augments, is good for the soil, but it also holds the moisture in place, so they did not lose their cotton crop. Anybody want to guess how much of the Texas cotton crop that was planted that wasn't harvested in 2022? How much cotton crop was lost in Texas in 2022 due to droughts? Any guesses? How much, Alice? Oh, you're such an optimist. In most of Texas, almost 70% of the cotton crop was not harvested. Now, they also got USDA funding for their cotton. It only works 3 years in a row. This year, there is no USDA funding for cotton crops that are lost due to drought. You can't, it's kind of like rebuilding in a floodplain, right? But what happens to the value of your land in Lubbock County, Texas, if you're a cotton farmer and you don't know about biochar? You're going to lose your land and you're going to lose the value of your land. So that's some examples of climate justice. But I'd like to let the panelists give me, hopefully everybody came prepared perhaps with an example of environmental and climate justice. Speaking of justice, Gary Lepla is a lawyer. So Gary, would you like to get us started?
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. Is this on? I don't need it. We're good.
It's on.
Okay. Anyway, I usually can talk pretty loud. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming in this wonderful night. And any thoughts I have? Well, let me back up. I'm the Environmental and Climate Justice Chair for the local Dayton unit, NAACP. And among the things we've looked at to try to be effective and what I've tried to carve out to find what exactly should our role be in that context is the unit recently was donated a building on Salem Avenue a few years ago and took it over. It used to be down in a very difficult spot on West 3rd Street where it was real interesting during our meetings late in the evening because of varmints and things. But they rehabbed this building, and as part of that process, we convinced everybody to go along with solar panels. And the Dayton unit in the 900 block of Salem across from the big church there, can't think of it, Grace United Methodist, thank you, has solar panels and it has batteries. So in theory, it's shelter in the storm up to a point because of the energy that can be stored in those batteries. If you have solar panels, everything you make otherwise goes directly back to AES, and they turn around and send you energy, but you get a credit for what you've created. That's how that whole thing works. But part of the challenge and the reason for doing that is, I hear it all the time, well, nobody out here in West Dayton is going to get panels. They're not going to get solar panels. And they're not going to buy EVs either, because if you buy one, you're going to want to put a charger in your house. And if you're renting, if you don't own your house, you're not going to put a charger in. So you're not going to buy an EV. I don't know if anybody here knows Rap Hankins, who's quite an activist, former Trotwood council member, who heads up Dayton, what do they call it? But it's the EV Association in Dayton. He's an African-American. He's adamant. He's down at 2nd Street Market every Saturday at his table, pounding the table about how this is what you need to get. I finally switched when I got tired of him harassing me. At any rate, the project there has been to try to convince folks and show a demonstration project that this is for everybody. And there are groups like Solar United Neighbors that have a branch in this community that help with funding and push those things forward. So that's, from the large issue to a small example of the kind of things that help change things gradually. But you got to sell the community on it, and you got to make it affordable and reasonable and attainable. And so that's one of the challenges there. But the overwhelming wash over me every day is what's happening to all these initiatives because of the current administration. People always say, oh, I don't want to get political. I'm going to talk about what we've lost, what we continue to lose. Regulatory reductions, cancellation of funding that Congress authorized. 65% of the EPA staff now eliminated. People at the EPA sitting around their desk crying because of what's happened, because those people are not there just for the paycheck. The dismantling, and then we go, I'm a lawyer, right? Okay, we have courts, we have a constitution. We also live in the state of Ohio. So you say, well, no matter what the feds do, we got the state. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to try not to be cynical, but there is a website you can go look at if you really want to get cynical, that has to do state by state with what their environmental justice initiatives are. It's called the Environmental Justice Law and Policy Database, ejstatebystate.org, Ohio. You can down the line. This is not funny. Environmental justice definitions in the law, none. Environmental justice as policy, none. Consideration of environmental adjustment and enforcement, none. Consideration of environmental justice and land use, none. State environmental policy, none. Prohibitions on disparate impact discrimination, none. Established environmental rights, none. Non-discrimination policy. The state says we meet our legal obligations and implement federal regulations. Well, those have changed now too. So, and then you say, well, you know, we've got other remedies in the law for nuisance, for other regulatory violations, for federal law violations. But we have ultimately that lands at the state Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that said you could turn the anti-gerrymandering language on its head, 100% by any reasonable analysis on its head, and they okayed it. Then you say, okay, well, we have the check on all this is going to be the federal courts. We see a lot of courageous and correct decisions from federal judges and federal courts of appeal now. And as we were talking earlier, every day, and I read a few articles between noon and tonight because it's moving so fast. Who's issued an injunction? Where does this stand going up the food chain? And the administration says, we got the Supreme Court. We're going to be fine. So they take a direct appeal to the Supreme Court on one of the latest district court initiatives. And the one Trump-appointed justice who voted on a small matter, not in his favor, has been assaulted verbally and in the media and in social media, everything you can think of, because of her vote, where she voted as we expect justices to vote for what's the correct interpretation of law. I'm a lawyer. I've spent over 40-some years doing this. I'm losing faith. I hate to tell you that. I lose faith. I've lost faith in the state Supreme Court. I've lost faith in what's going on in Washington. We're going to find out for sure here in the next month or two. But that's the overwhelming shadow on all of this conversation. We recognize these problems. We know they have to be dealt with. We had plenty of initiatives in place. We had improvement in alternate energy usage in this country under the prior administration. And right now, it's all at risk. So we know the problems, but we're being robbed of the solutions. So I wish I had better news legally. I've got a checklist of 7 major things that this administration had changed and how we hope to counter them legally. But that ultimately ends up at the top. So we'll see.
Thank you. A couple of things. One is, I did wear my favorite t-shirt tonight. It's about whale poop. Alice was very good and had some 6th graders here last month. And whale poop is very important to help combat climate change. Believe it or not, there were about 600,000 right whales in 1600. Then we started harvesting them. And by 1972, we had just under 6,000 of them. And now we stopped doing that, so we have about 60,000. Well, what happens is whales eat krill deep in the ocean, bring it to the surface and poop. Algae grows, and you get that whole food cycle, lots of fish. So the ocean is sort of dying, but about 10% of all that biomass sinks to the bottom of the ocean and makes oil eventually, sometimes. It goes to the bottom of the ocean anyway. And so if we had a couple million whales, we'd be worried about having an ice age. So let's hear it for whales. Let's not kill any more whales. Any thoughts on climate or environmental justice?
Sure. So, this one's definitely on. My name's Jake Bauer. I teach philosophy and ethics, and one of the courses I teach quite a bit is engineering ethics and business ethics, and I always do a large unit on environmental ethics because the reality is that all of our professions in this country, but especially engineering and business, we have an impact on our environment, and for a very long time we haven't really considered our overall effects of our everyday lives, including our careers. But even though our professions are part of the problem, historically, we hope we can look for ways that we can steer them to be parts of the solutions. And there's good news amidst all the bad news currently with the current administration, is that we are on a trajectory that we have, through the work of many people, like the people here today, and the people both on stage and the people coming to events like this, is that we have turned the direction away from absolute disaster. If everything just stayed as normal, and nobody did anything in face of issues of climate change that have arisen, we would be on a trajectory of disaster in terms of like 9 or 8 degrees or so above the normal. Now we're on a trajectory of still bad things happening, and every single 0.1 degree lower we can get it, the better. And of course, unfortunately, current events are making projections go warmer, but still not quite as bad as they used to be because of actions of people resisting bad policies and bad practices. So one of the biggest questions I always get, thankfully, a lot of students, just like in the room here today, are no longer, it used to be when I first started teaching around 10 years ago, there was a lot of effort trying to just make sure people were aware that this is a real issue and it's not just conspiracy theory. I think, thankfully, most students in the classroom now are on board. They realize this is a problem, and they want to know what are some of the solutions. And there isn't a single solution, but there's lots of different solutions that we can be a part of. And in the face of our current political issues around a lot of things, including climate change, one of the things that I think the world is looking to us for is what are we going to do individually as citizens to resist, and how do we push at counter pressure to help steer the boat back into the directions that it was going before. About a couple points of good news in terms of, if we look at a longer history, like 10 years, 20 years, even in the United States, our greenhouse gas emissions per person are going down. They've been going down even the last Trump administration. They were going down, just not quite as quickly as when other administrations are in play. And how does that happen, even though we have climate deniers in power right now, and how does greenhouse gas emissions still go down during those administrations? We speak on their level and point to the places where, look, it's cheaper. It's cheaper for you to install solar panels. It's cheaper to install wind turbines rather than open up a new coal mine. And so looking for ways that we can speak to those that are pushing back on climate issues. You might have to speak in a different language, and you have to look at ways that will appeal to them. But I think there are real-world things that we can do to press back, and I think it's we need to think creatively and think what's within our own individual purview, what's within the people that we can talk to and the places that we can engage in. But I do think there are ways that we can help put counter pressure on the current moment.
Thank you. Umesh?
Well, thank you. My name is Umesh Haritasha. I am a geologist, environmental geoscientist at University of Dayton. Currently, I also direct the sustainability program at University of Dayton. Let me pick up, when we're talking about climate justice, let me pick up all the different points that has been raised, starting with what Alice was talking earlier. Think about Kiribati. I mean, you were talking about the island, the speaker was here. There are a bunch of different places like that. I mean, this is going to be a interesting time in our history in the next half century or so. If you think about where the population is, there are lots and lots of population is close to the coastal area. And where some of these major changes are happening, example that you used in terms of the water table, and that's the type of thing that are happening not far from us. Go to Florida. I mean, Lonnie and I were talking earlier a couple of days back. Just visit. How many of us like to go to Miami? I mean, think about the places like that. There, the saltwater intrusion is a big problem. All over the world, those type of things are happening. If you think about where the major populations are, if you think about, we were talking about global south, think about the places like Bangladesh. They have a huge population. They are living close to the ocean. And as the sea level rises, things are going to be much more interesting to deal with from a climate justice standpoint. So when we think about where the people are living, where the access to the real luxury is, and the access to the real needs that they have, whether we talk about the food, shelter, clothes, it's going to be a challenge from that perspective. The access that they have, and as the climate changes, as the impact changes to the climate, to the people, real people, and the infrastructure that they have created, it's going to be much more interesting in the next several decades. It's already happening. I mean, if you think about the places where the climate refugee was not a word when I did my PhD thinking about climate, there was not a word anybody spoke 20 years back. Now it's a pretty common word. I mean, climate refugee is a word that has been recognized now. You go to the UN conferences, it's a pretty recognized word because it's happening on a much more larger scale than one realize it. We are sitting here in Ohio. We really, Lonnie was making a point earlier, we see a few things here and there, but we might actually see a lot more of those things. Some of those impacts are happening to us, we just don't realize it. I mean, insurance was an example that was used. Our insurance rates are increasing. We are paying more money. I mean, think about your car insurance 5 years back. Just go back and look at your car insurance 5 years back. Look at your house insurance 5 years back, and look at those house and car insurance today. They have increased. What has changed? Nothing has changed here. We are living in the same place. Not much has changed, but the world around us is changing. Some places people are seeing the effect on a daily basis. We are not, but we are all suffering the consequences of that. So I think we all need to think from a global standpoint, whether we are a part of a change or we are part of a cause, and that's where I think all of it comes down to. So islands like that is everywhere. The other example that has been used on the stage today is about the EV. I bought a car back in about 2008 I bought a car, and I said, well, this is the last car I'm going to buy. That's emits so much, but again, there was not much going on around that time, so I had to buy a couple other cars which were all gasoline. And then I said, in about 2015, I'm not going to buy any more car which is gasoline, so I bought an EV. There was very few EV even during COVID time. I mean, if you go drive around, you'll see a couple EVs here or there, but not many EVs. Right now, you're driving around, you'll see many more EVs. Of course, they are partly because federal government recognized the importance of it, provided the subsidy and that rebate everybody got. And last year, a lot more EVs were sold here in the United States than ever. The point is, they are part of the solution. But the other point also from a climate justice standpoint, much more increasingly we are going to hear, and we all have to think about it actually. I drive it on a daily basis. That's my car, primary car. Where's the batteries coming from? How are we making sure that the materials that we are using in our cars, it's coming from all over different parts of the world? Are we really justifying the use of those labors, justifying the use of those places where it's coming from to show that, well, I drive EV, I recognize the need for the cars, so I am cool here because I'm driving that. But the climate justice associated with it is also a very important part. Not saying that EVs are not good, not saying that we shouldn't drive it. We should drive it for sure. Gasoline cars are not really good for the climate, but we also need to recognize the importance of the parts and the labors that are basically all putting everything and making sure that we all can drive the car. So there are examples like that all over the place. Um, I'm a scientist. I like to believe on the data, and that's all my career. There's a bunch of data out there showing that how rapidly world is changing. My own research has fortunate been funded by for about 15 years now, funded by the government agencies. And some of those things are going to be impacted in the next couple of years. Fortunately, none of my grant has been canceled yet, but I will not be surprised if that happens because they're all climate change related grants. What we need to think about is, as a citizen, we need to think about as we go to the polling booth, we need to think about as we talk to people, we need to think about our kids, our students. I've been teaching here for 17 years at UD. What are we telling them? What are we telling them? Most people sitting here, I see a couple young people here, and most of us basically are going to have a challenging time, but may not suffer the direct consequences living in Ohio. But the students who we are teaching currently in high school, in colleges, they are going to have to suffer these things. They are going to have to face these things. So are we there at a point where we can say that we did whatever we can and now it's up to you? Or can we say that, no, we really didn't do, we could have done more? And I think we all need to ask this question ourselves from a climate justice standpoint. We all need to think. I'm an optimistic guy. I think as you were saying earlier, 70% of the people believe global warming now. So as more and more people believe it, as more and more people think about it, I think things will change. And one last point I'll make is about the communication that you were talking about earlier. Scientists are not a good communicator. We do our work and I published the paper and I told everybody this is the data, this is the graph, and that's things are changing and I'm done. I think we need to change that. I think we need to go to the forums. I'm glad this is me coming first time to this place. I had no idea and I've lived here for several years. Thank you for doing it. I think thank you, Lonnie, for organizing it. I think these are the events where we need to go. We need to talk about it. We need to tell people that it's not that I am telling and it's right. We need to show the data and communicate in the way that it can be translated. It's a pocketbook issue. As long as we can tell that this is a pocketbook issue, I think our words are going to register. There is no other way, in my opinion, that a person who can go and when they are making the decision is going to impact. They all have to think about what is going to happen in the next couple years and how my decisions today is going to have an impact on my pocketbook this year, next year, and the year after that. And if we can communicate the data that we have in a way that this is the change that we need so that our lives will be better tomorrow, that's where we need to go.
Thank you. I wanted to let the audience ask questions. If you have some questions, anyone have any questions? Yes. Sure.
I think that the movement is always putting a Band-Aid on the problem instead of really trying to assess what is happening that we are facing this problem. When I go and drive in my class and I see a house that has 4 or 5 cars, it's because maybe everyone has to go someplace, to their job, or to go to school. And public transportation is not what it needs to be. And so what I see is this constant, the bottom line is what matters. How much can we make from all of this? And so instead of feeding and housing the young children, we are going to have more prisons. We're going to feed and house the felons. young children, preschool on up. I don't, I can't make sense of it. So why do we take so much time trying to do the bandage work when we really ought to look at the big picture and determine exactly what are the problems and how can we fix it? And my feeling is we should be addressing all of those children, the next generations. What are we leaving them? What are our values? What really truly matters to us? And I think if you don't examine those larger, deeper issues, then you're just going to be talking about different ways to bandage the problem.
So I hear what you're saying, and I love numbers. So let me give you a few numbers about the difference between bandaging and not addressing the whole thing, okay? So carbon dioxide, a natural cycle is about 200 billion tons of carbon dioxide created every year by people respirating and burning fossil fuels. And about 200 billion tons of carbon dioxide is used in photosynthesis a year. Humans generate beyond that 200 billion, about 10 more billion, something in that range. And we are it goes up and down, but we're hanging in there at about 10 billion tons that is excess. Well, since 1800, of course, if you have excess and it keeps accumulating in the atmosphere, that's the problem, is that accumulation over 200 years. And we're getting to tipping points now. And so that's kind of a problem. So what we need is something to address about 10 billion ton problem. Well, we address 10 billion tons of aluminum and 10 billion tons of steel and other things. We can certainly address 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide. So when I showed you the bag of biochar, 10 billion tons of biochar would solve the problem for a year, right? So what have we done? And the truth is, for just a few $1 trillion, a couple, 3 trillion, Jacob will probably correct me, we could get down to about 80% of net zero. The problem is the last 20% is really hard. And so one of the solutions is to capture carbon in some way and store it in a way that it won't get back in the atmosphere. And that would cost about 1 or 2 trillion. And so we have solutions, and I think everybody said we have solutions to our problems. They're just not being funded very aggressively. Now, we do have some funding for, I can sell my biochar. It would be nice if the government gave me a little subsidy. I can make from algae sustainable aviation fuel, but it costs about 50% more than regular petroleum, so nobody buys it. Nobody would buy it, and so I can't get funding to make more. But the truth is, the best thing which has been shown worldwide is exactly what you said, which is when businesses can create a debt, an externality, a carbon debt.
Tell me that I said that.
You know what you said. I'm sorry. What I heard you say was that we're band-aiding the problem and we're not really fixing it, and it's a bottom line issue. So to change the bottom line would only need a carbon tax, and it only needs to be about $50 a ton for carbon.
You see, you're talking numbers.
Yeah, I am.
I'm not talking numbers like that. I'm not talking money. I'm not talking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about values and addressing the current trend. What you're saying is we need all this money. That's all. We just need all this money so we can do this and we can do that. And,
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're in trouble.
So values-wise, what do you see? So one of the mission of the Peace Museum is to create a culture of peace, and a culture of peace is based on values. So what values should we be
the
looking?
value of humanity and the how one how as a humanity worldwide we can live and find ways of living that we are not faced with this
Yeah.
problem. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be work done in trying to provide this Band-Aid, but perhaps it would behoove us to look beyond that
At the
and
values.
see that if you continue in the direction you're going, you are going to constantly have the additional expense of trying to fix the problem. So yeah, I know you're comfortable with the numbers, but
Well, I'm an engineer.
uh,
But that's okay to call me out. That's fine.
Can I make a point, Lonnie?
Sure.
So I think you're right. I think we are all trying to address it at the moment. That what's going on right now. Let's figure it out. Put a band-aid, and then we'll worry about it later. I mean, it's the human nature. I think we are all trying to do more and more every single day. And in order for us to accomplish and be satisfied that, well, I have done something, the best is to do it right now, not worry about 10 years. Problem is the vision. I think our leaders are, and again, I'm going to call out myself as well. It's not just the problem of the leaders. We all need to be, as a human, as a citizen, whether we hold any role positions or not, we all need to be visionary and doing the right thing at all the time. I agree with you. I think it's also that our leaders at the state level, at the leaders at the local level, leaders at the federal level, they need to be visionary. What we are putting out there is, at least this is my opinion, is the people who can help me out, again going back to your point of a band-aid, who can help me out in the next 4 years. And this is not a 4-year problem. We haven't gotten here in 4 years and will not get out of here this thing in 4 years. It's been boiling for a long time. We never recognized it. In last 2 decades, at least we are talking like this. Before that, there was not even a talk. It's going to take a long time before we can get out. The only way it can happen is by the values, of course, but also by the vision. And it can happen when we start to talk about it, when we start to translate that vision, that of course there are multiple steps in order to get there. So we will need Band-Aid. I don't think we can get to that end point without the Band-Aid. Think about, and the way I think about it while you're talking is, let's have a cut. I'm going to put a Band-Aid or put something on it before I can get to hospital. And once I go there, I can get a treatment right kind. So I think we all need a Band-Aid in order to solve it at a moment notice, but we also need to have those values and visions to then take the harder decisions to then get to that point is what I view.
I did have a question for the panel and for the audience, and it's the question that made me want to do tonight's presentation or tonight's meeting, right? And the question was about particularly climate refugees. And as I put a little chart over on the table over here that showed the number of climate refugees from the global south will be fairly high. And I mentioned the number 500 million climate migrants. But so the question is, do people from the global south have a right to migrate to Ohio? That is, nothing they did caused this problem. Where they live is will become uninhabitable in part, and partially uninhabitable because we're not helping them to mitigate the issues they are having. But do they actually have a right to come to the United States, and Ohio specifically, and is that an ethical issue that we should be addressing? So do people from the Brazilian rainforest, the Amazon, have a right to come to the United States when they can no longer live there because of droughts? Jacob?
Putting me on the spot. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky issue. On one level, it's thinking of the general principles. Like these are people who have been harmed, and they have been harmed by a global something that we've done globally. But people in the United States and Western countries, in particular, and affluent countries, have an outsized role in terms of what has contributed to climate events that leads to climate refugees. And so if you think of try to make it to more of a general principle, the idea is, well, these people have been harmed more so by people in these regions than other regions. And so perhaps people in those regions hold more of a burden to help alleviate the problem. And if their current problem is they need a place to live, they need a place to have safety, from these issues. Do they have, I think, on a moral level, there's many different ways that maybe you could address that. Part of it is a place to live, such as in your own backyard. Another way to do that is maybe build infrastructure to make it safer in places closer to them that they could go live into, go to live. So I think the larger issue, I think we do have a more responsibility to address the issue, especially since we have, as a country and as a region, an outsized impact on creating this problem compared to the people in those regions use very little resources per person and have contributed basically nothing comparatively to the issues of climate change, but are taking the brunt force of the issues of climate change and the increased weather events. I kind of to bring it back to that issue of the global south, the issues of climate change in the United States, we see hurricanes, floods, they're terrible. Believe it or not, the amount of deaths from weather events and from natural disasters have gone down in the United States over the past 100 years, even though as we've seen over the news reports every single year, we've had more climate events and more natural disasters every year. Why is that? Well, because we're a really wealthy country and we have the resources to anticipate when a hurricane's going to hit, get people out, address the issue, spend millions, billions of dollars addressing the issue. The places that don't have those resources are more affected, and they once again weren't the drivers of these increased natural disasters, but yet they're the most impacted. I think that if we just say a blanket, they have a right to come to Ohio. I think on one level I sympathize. Like I think once again we have a duty to help those in need in general, independent of whether we're responsible for it. But we are somewhat responsible, including everybody in this room, more so than the average person living in the extreme poverty areas across the world. The question is, what's going to practically help them more? Us saying, open the doors, you come in. I think the practical realities is that right now, unfortunately, increased immigration fires people up in a negative way, and people are going to be very upset about it, unfortunately. And so the question is, like, how can we practically help them? Maybe part of that is helping change the values of our country, fight against that natural bias that humans have when people they don't know come into a country for whatever reason. They like to blame them for everything. How do we change those values of the country? I think that's a long-term vision that hopefully we can direct ourselves to be more compassionate and more welcoming to those in need. In the immediate term, in the next 5-10 years, I think we need to look for other ways to help build up the ways or the international cooperation efforts to be able to help them, which right now is also being decimated, unfortunately. So what are ways that we can step in and help build back up some of these structures for us to be able to help those that are increasingly going to be facing some of these events?
Any thoughts, you guys?
Well, I will also have the our lawyer to talk about that. Well, I was born in India, so I come from one of those global south countries. I've been here in this country for more than 2 decades now. I think there is an issue of a right versus what's important for all of us to do. So the question is about right. I think there's a lot of legalities in it, and I'm not a person who understands all of those things in a real way. So that's why I invited you to comment on that. When it comes to whether they are in the harm's way or not, that is true. I mean, a lot of my research is from that standpoint. I do work with the glaciers a lot. So if you think about that, think about ice in your freezer. You take the ice out, ice starts to melt. If you increase the temperature, all the glacier will start to melt. They are melting. So if you think about why the glaciers are important, what he's talking about, where is he going with this? Think about it. Majority of the fresh water is actually in a frozen way. So if you think about Antarctica, Greenland is a lot in news these days. So if you think about the Antarctica, Greenland, Himalayan mountains, Colorado Rockies, ice, glaciers all over the world, that's basically what the fresh water is. But if they start to melt, they are going to go to the ocean. So our ocean right here, if the Antarctica and Greenland starts to melt rapidly, they are already melting pretty high rate. If they start to melt rapidly, sea level rise all over across this, the coastal area in this country, everywhere else is going to have an impact. So global south is going to suffer a lot. If you think about the population, as I was referring earlier, global south is a huge population. If you also think about places like Peru and places like Argentina, they also have a lot of population. So I think they will also suffer that. Whether they have a right to come here and live, I think we all need to think about that very, very carefully. I'm not here to make a judgment call of whether that's one way of doing it. I think what we all need to do is, what are the steps that we can take that those places which they call home. Nobody likes to leave home. This is truth. I mean, whether we say people that, well, we will provide everything, you come here and live. Nobody wants to leave home. They only leave home because they have no other choice left. So if we are talking about climate refugee, we are talking about the people who have been harmed in that way, and if they have a right to come here and live, it's not an easy decision. Can we make something, can we all do the decision making at this point in time that will help reverse in some way, shape, or form? I think that's the best strategy. If you think about Ohio, I mean, at one point in time, go back in the history, at one point in time, Ohio had ocean. So if you go back and you can even find the fossils right now, which fossils, same fossils you can find in the ocean. Then we had glaciers here. So not too far back, we had ice age and we had glaciers here in the exact same place where we are sitting right now. And now we have sort of a temperate type climate. We have a warm climate, we have the cold climate, all of those things. That will change. So if the point I'm trying to raise here is, if we don't change things, at one point in time, it will be much more habitable, but then it will not be habitable as well. So I think the rights is important to think about, but we also need to go to the root cause and try and see how can we mitigate some of the climate challenges before we get to that point. And last point I'll make is, definitely we all are responsible for it in some way, shape, or form. So morally, as you were saying earlier, we definitely have to take some responsibility. When it comes to the legality of moving the people to the country because of this thing, I will invite other esteemed panel.
Garrett?
We hold these truths to be self-evident. Inalienable rights. First question, what rights? What are you talking about? Who has rights? You have rights in this country according to the Constitution that are under attack, but where is the universal distribution of rights to folks from somewhere else to come here? I grew up thinking, why in the heck was I born here? Why don't I live in an impoverished village in Africa? Why don't I live in the rainforest in Brazil? Why don't I live? What's the deal? Why am I here? And I think I still ask myself that. And rights are the product of what you believe, I guess. But from a legal standpoint, there's no right for anybody to come in if somebody's got a border and builds a wall. You're not going to, but once you're here, we claim that we provide certain rights. So Um, what's the source of all that? So there's really no international answer to rights, because unfortunately we have all these countries and they make their own rules and they let people in or they get mad about it. And you're right, it's a hot button issue. But these people that are telling us what they're going to do now, we put in office. Ohioans put this state legislature in office that has no DEI or anything else going on, has no concern about those individual rights. And this nation, no matter how many of us feel that we had nothing to do with it, is responsible for that. The other thing I used to think about as a kid is, how in the heck did Hitler get power? How could those, I'm part of my family history is German. Seem like good people. How did that happen? Well, what's happening here right now? It's an individual question, but you can't cede power to a minority that wants to oppress and not recognize what we call our inalienable rights historically in this country. So it's got to start here in your heart, but we gotta embrace that. There's so much to change. There's so much to sell. The farmers out in the Great Plains who overwhelmingly voted for this administration are so angry at what's happening right now. The workers who've lost jobs and face that prospect are so angry now. The people that work in industries that count on steel and aluminum, who are going to lose their jobs because of tariffs, are so angry right now. Does it have to come to this before people embrace what's going on and understand the truth? So it's not something that political parties can solve, and they surely don't seem inclined to. It's not something that municipalities or counties or states can solve. It's got to come from the people. And I think part of the purpose of this forum is to share ideas and information to activate all of us. The one thing that's going to speak to this administration, we're in a country where you can't call for new elections, right? Boy, wouldn't that be? Well, anyway, we got to go 4 years. But I will tell you, people involved in the administration are very, very aware of public opinion and very aware of what the stock market does and all kinds of things. So every one of us has to step up. We have to attend rallies. We have to come to forums. We have to speak out. We have to be ambassadors for the truth and for fairness and for rights, inalienable rights that we claim we agree with. That's not an answer, but that's the best thought you can have when you don't have the tools to do something about it. And we have to count on our courts right now. Look, I'm a lawyer. I'm invested in that. But what is going to help correct this? It's got to be the courts. If the courts let us down, I don't have anything that I can add. I don't know what to say. But speak out, educate, activate. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. Questions? Comments?
I'm going to be one positive and one negative, just in case. So I'm going to be the ideal American governor, where we're going to open our doors to the global south environmental refugees. So let's say we are that kind and that heart to receive them. The question is, do we have the resources, the natural resources, to accept billions from global south to come up here? That's the positive question, that we're good-hearted people. The negative side is, not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, when the disaster earthquake in Syria and Turkey took place, in Afghanistan, the word was, let them die, there are too many of them. So it didn't take an administration to decide that. It was us people saying that. So obviously, it's not only correcting the administration attitude, it is the human attitude, the values that we're talking about. If that didn't change, neither Global South nor Global North is going to survive. But I'll put it up to you, how can we afford the natural resources if we open our doors? And then how can we combat that hate and that discrimination against Global South if we say there are too many of you, so it's good that you lie?
It's part of getting the truth out. Anybody that's familiar with Springfield, and what's gone on there. And the governor of Ohio knows it, and the mayor of Springfield knows it, and the people of Springfield know it, that that town has been saved by the 12,000 plus Haitians that came there. I represent a few of them on other unrelated not immigration matters, because I don't do that. But those folks, all they want to do is live in peace, and raise their kids and work. They pay taxes. They go to work every day. That is an example, and you can find examples that are not good of groups of immigration. But that example does not apply to every situation, but that's the consequence of immigration to help reactivate a town and the businesses there. And when those folks move out because they're afraid, as they should be, Springfield's in big trouble again. Not that it got completely out of trouble.
They are not out here to support me as an immigrant. That hate is getting so far up my ass, sorry for saying it, and I don't have them to support me. I'm from Global South. I know I'm not welcome here, and I will advise the Global South not to come here, even if we have a disaster. They better die what they are with dignity rather than coming here and being infected.
I would simply, real briefly say, yeah, that's absolutely part of what the NAACP believes. They kind of got their hands full with some current issues with people who are members and involved, but I see it all the time. I see it from our local unit president who speaks out about those things, who goes to bat, who goes to the media for an injustice to a white kid or an immigrant kid or anybody else. Maybe we need more aggressiveness, certainly.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you so much for speaking. I'm recalling the very first article in the Nation. It's a very long article. Closing all I've heard tonight is dehumanization. That word was used. We're all just humans.
Right.
This is the young person in the session who's pointing this out. What is that telling us? Whoa, maybe we should think about this.
Hope for the future.
The hope for the future is there. And I experienced that. Because, and I just recalled this about 10 years ago at Southern Pennsylvania, because I was incarcerated because of the way I looked. I looked like the enemy. So I was incarcerated in Arizona, in New York City. And eventually we went back to the town that I was in, which I was born, and I was going to a school. And in the 8th grade, the teacher was going to show us the 3 arms of the government: the legislative, the presidential, and the judicial. She said, we are going to begin with the judicial, and we're going to select a jury. And I'd like you to vote for the person that you feel would be fair and reasonable. I was 50. I was the only non-white person in that classroom. So the grandmothers or the grandparents and parents thought because of the way I looked, and I was a Catholic. My mother took my grandmother. My father and her father were two the way that we are. So their parents and grandparents thought because of the way I looked, I was the enemy. But here, because of the years we've gone through school together, I was the one who spoke. There's hope again. And I hear hope with the young people. I hear it and I see it. So I think the labels are very damaging because the labels make assumptions.
Put food on the
truly thinking about, well, that you're thinking about the humanity. And I think that, you know, we talk about race, but there's only one race, and that's the human race. And the eclipse showed us that there was just one Earth, right? So if we're all going to survive on it, then we better all work together.
Yeah, maybe if I can build upon this, I think a large part of the human story is looking for ways for us to recognize each other's humanity. And unfortunately, there's a part, I mean, there's good and bad in each of us. And there's a part of us that reacts, that wants to divide and wants to view things separate. My people close to me, they have value, and other people that aren't close to me, for whatever reason, don't have value. But there's also a part of us that recognizes the love and care of other human beings as well. And over time, it's a constant effort that we always have to make. And I think we're making progress. Like if we look at 100 years ago, 200 years ago, what daily life was like, how did people treat the other then? It was terrible. If you look back 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, terrible, but slowly getting better. And I think even though we're in an era where people seeking to divide get the attention and get the political power, unfortunately, still, if you look at the long arc of history, we are still bending towards justice, and we just need to keep that pressure going. We can't got to keep on working to help others recognize the humanity of everybody else, but that includes us as well. And I think one of the difficult aspects of living in such a divided time is we often will see our opponents as less than human as well. And so then we don't try to think from their perspective. No, they are just someone, they're irrational, they're wrong, they're something that I can't talk to. And that just makes the divisions grow. And so one of the challenging aspects that I find in myself as well, with everything going on in the world, is looking for ways, how can I communicate with them? Like where is our common ground? How can I understand where they are coming from and help them realize the ways that they aren't recognizing the humanity in others? So the first step is trying to recognize their humanity, but then use that as a way to hopefully find ways for them to recognize the humanity of others, whether it is the people in this country, whether it's the people in the global south, and look at the ways that if you can help them recognize their lives have value too, and your actions are impacting their lives, and what are ways that we can work together to continue this human story of improving our lives over time. And once again, there's a lot of positives here. There was one, and just a couple hundred years ago, half of all children died before they reached adulthood. Half of every single child who was born did not live to be an adult. Today, it's around, trying to remember the exact numbers, I want to say globally it's around 4% it's only 4% of children who die before they become adults, which is still a tragedy. It's awful. It's around 14,000 children every single day. It's morally abysmal that we still allow that to go on. But when in countries like our own, it's less than 1%. It's a fraction of 1%. We've made amazing progress of taking care of each other, helping each other to grow, and through our collective action. A lot of those solutions still aren't making to the places in extreme poverty, but some of them are. And the question is, like, how do we continue that progress? I recognize that we've made great strides, and how do we continue doing that? Spreading and a part of it, I think, is the values aspect, helping recognize each other's humanity. Another part is just trying to find solutions and spread those solutions to places that they don't have them yet. And I think that story plays out in global health, but also in climate change. The technologies that we're developing that take a lot of capital, take a lot of resources to develop, like solar panels used to be extremely expensive. Now they're dirt cheap. How can we help expand those resources and extend those resources to places that that wouldn't have them otherwise, help accelerate the green movement.
And it's not going to help that we have tariffs, right?
Absolutely not. But yeah, so then the question, like, how do we speak to the current administration and people that support the current administration? And how do we speak to those type of people to help them see the destruction that's taking place and empathize with the lives that are being destroyed currently with the current policies?
Yeah, I think the hope is there. Like I said, I've been teaching these young students who are basically going to be in next couple of years a big change maker, because they are going to graduate from college. They are the future, and you can see the change there. The classes that enter college today are much more climatically aware. Whether they do something or not, that's a different thing, but they're aware of it than just 10, 15 years back. So they are aware of this. So the young person you were talking about in that article, humanization, that high school student, they are much more aware. They are much more an activist in making the change. So I think we all need to lean on that positive side, that hopefully the generation that's coming up, who will be 15, 20 years later, making a lot of stuff, changing the decisions of the policymakers. I think they are in a right hand. I'll use an example. So my daughter is in high school, and living with a teenage kid is an interesting in its own, but I don't know she understands the whole reality of the climate or not. But when I see the writings that she does for an application and stuff, I can see the hope there. I see that you talk to her on a daily basis. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen to this kid in the life. But when you see the writing, when you see what she writes, what she thinks, and they're in the right place. They'll make things out. They will understand it. They'll figure it out. So the hope is there. I'm not optimistic, as I said, but I'm also a realist in a way that I can see the change happening, and I see the young people are coming up with a greater ideas, and they want to change the world. They don't want to live in the same situation. So hope is there for sure.
Thank you. I think that's going to wrap it up. Alice is taking a hook to me. One more question? Please.
people could agree on facts, but we yeah.
It seems like we did. Honestly, though,
Historically, we did. I mean, we argued.
I would agree with you. Would you say kind of work for probably these kinds of people that institutions do before there was there's not a long piece to it, right? So it's not a sufficient condition. Sure looks like it.
Well, striving for peace is really important. Good thing we're in a peace museum.
Understand why it breaks down. We talk about the justice system. That's the only way.
Well, there will be lots of conflict related to climate, and that will make it very difficult because people will be harmed and they'll be looking for some restitution, and it simply won't be there. In terms of the capitalistic system, numbers of countries have imposed carbon taxes, and that has led to people just finding solutions, doing things a different way. And so I think you're right about the monetary side of it. Or in a capitalistic society, you have to put a price on carbon. You just have to. That's how the system works. Yes, that would be a good analysis, but I don't want Gary to talk to that because, you know, he's read already. Why we don't have it is a terrible problem. I would agree with you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I think we need to wrap it up. Is that right, Alice?
If I can add just one framework I like to try to think through these problems with, it's sometimes called the SNS framework, scale, neglectedness, solvability. And so I think you're right. There are structural issues that can lead us to the problems that we have, and perhaps the capitalist nature is one of these are symptoms natural that would come out of a capitalist country. But so perhaps you may say like things would be a lot better if we did not have the private property, if we didn't have a capitalist system, maybe, and that could be the case. But my main problem right now is we have problems that, or I guess problem with focusing on that aspect is that we have problems facing people today, the next 10 years, and so on. And there's hard for me to imagine of how we can solve that issue, and that trying to solve that issue will help these people in the immediate future. Now, maybe this is a long-term, how can we steer our government system in a way that isn't so exploitive to others and also to the climate and to the environment. Great, but in terms of like, what's the scale of the issue? How big is the problem? Well, it's pretty big. But what are the neglectedness? You know, in terms of, are there people actually trying to address this problem? And the biggest thing is solvability. Is this something that I can actually take an action that will help us move in the right direction or something? And maybe there are. In terms of if we identify it as a broader system in terms of government structure aspect, maybe there's small ways that we could steer the ship in another direction. But I'm concerned if we focus all of our energy in that might be a dead end. and maybe something that we know. Yeah, so yeah, I guess once again, yeah. Yeah, once again, my concern is the energies that put there. What's the results? I guess, and it might. Maybe there's I'd like to see a theory of action in terms of like, all right, here's our plan, step by step. And maybe there is a good plan there. Maybe we need to put more energies in that. My worries is that right now I think there are actually a lot of people working on that, and I haven't seen a good plan of like how does this actually solve our issues in a realistic sense in the next 5-10 years. I don't know, and I think, but we do have some solutions that I know if we maybe there is a way that we can direct towards something like a carbon tax. Maybe have to call it something different because Americans hate taxes. But maybe there's something like that works with market forces with the current system where we can start addressing some of these issues in the immediate future. Things like that we have, well, like Texas is one of the leaders in clean energy. Why? Because
It
it's
makes
cheap.
sense.
Yeah, it's something that they. So if we have some solutions that we can actually appeal to both sides of the aisle and start addressing this issue now, but while we perhaps work on the larger, broader systemic issues over time.
Thank you. Thank you, Alice, for hosting us.
Borrow your mic for a second. I'm gonna try. Thank you. Feel free to stick around and continue the conversation. But I am encouraged by the young people that I get to spend time with here at the museum, and I think we have a hopeful future. So I'm grateful for it. Thank you for being here, and please come back and bring a friend. Thank you to our panelists.
Thanks, Emily.